Rece Davis, ESPN College Game Day host, play-by-play voice as well for the mothership. Congratulations. I guess you dominate Seth Davis, no relation.
No relation at all. Occasionally, we are mistaken for one another. I tell him it's a compliment to him and a great insult to me. So,
give me the difference when you go to a college campus for football, college campus for basketball. What's the biggest difference in the crowds that you run into?
monumental event in football because everything builds to that singular day, and the entire footprint of where the stage is for the show, Dan, is the event just feels bigger. College Game Day basketball, it's a little more intimate, I think, is probably the biggest thing. There's a huge feeling of anticipation when you get on campus for game day football, and it's more like you're joining a bunch of old friends, I think, when you go for basketball.
Tournament expansion, where do you stand on this? Seth Davis said it's not a question of if it's going to happen, it's when.
I'm not a big fan of it because I think it's already plenty big. So I think that's probably right that it's inevitable, but I think it's big enough now. We already have teams that we're upset about at the end of the line, and I had some differences, but not enough to really get angry about, because when you start talking about the difference between 68 and 69, it's not like arguing over Florida State, Georgia, as opposed to Alabama and Texas in football this past year. So I think it's plenty big enough, and I don't want to see it diluted to the point that the regular season is diminished more than it already has been.
Biggest surprise on Selection Sunday for you and everybody up there with you on ESPN was what?
I think it wasn't about inclusion. I think the biggest surprise to me was that UConn is the definitive number one team and overall seed, and I felt as if they really loaded up their bracket. I mean, I know we can be prisoners of the moment with all of the conference champions winding up in there, but I think it's also fair to say that they easily got the most difficult 4 seed in Auburn. I mean, Auburn's a team that you could pick to go to the Final Four if they weren't going to run into UConn. On the other side, you also have the 2 in there, Iowa State, same thing. So, you could argue they got the toughest 2 and the toughest 4. And then they got Illinois, who, with Terrence Shannon dropping 40 and 36, is capable of carrying a team sort of in that Kemba Walker fashion. So, to me, the biggest surprise was they loaded up the region, in my judgment, for the team that is clearly the best team.
And they got to choose where they wanted to play, and then it's almost like, okay, you got to do that. It's like you're choosing the restaurant you're going to. We're going to choose the menu that you get to choose from. So I agree with you on that. Storylines with the men's tournament versus storylines for the women's tournament. Feels like, the women, they're there for a couple of years, maybe usually 3, if not 4 years, where the men's still the one and done. The difference in the storylines for you this year is how big?
I think you have the juggernaut versus the superstar storylines in the women's game, which, is what Caitlin Clark has done in terms of selling out arenas, bringing attention, making people from all walks of sports life wanting to see her play is a phenomenon that we don't run across very often in college sports, and we should enjoy it. And then you have South Carolina, which appears to be all but invincible. So I think you have a couple of competing storylines there. And on the men's side, given UConn its due and the respect that it deserves, it still feels like the entire season was defined by juggernauts getting clipped. We had a near record number of top 10 teams being beaten by unranked opponents. And I think that's sort of the storyline that the prevailing sentiment is. What exactly are we going to see in terms of who's going to wind up there? It's sort of like last year. I mean, you have Florida Atlantic and Miami and San Diego State all and UConn wasn't a highly seeded team, but they were, I think everybody who watched the season knew how good they were. But I think there's a feeling of, will we see that type of upheaval again this year?
Is Connecticut sort of the have they replaced Duke? Have they replaced Kentucky hasn't really been up there. Indiana's not up there. Like, is Connecticut the team in men's college basketball?
They're the team, but they haven't replaced them because for a number of reasons. And I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I know they're on TV a lot, but they don't dominate television the way that Duke and Kentucky have and do. So I don't think there's the same level of disdain outside their immediate rivals. In execution and performance, yes, they're the team, and they sort of established that over the last couple of years, and they are that level from a performance standpoint. But I don't think there's the contempt, widespread contempt among other fans that you got for Duke and some of the others.
Well, it might be for their coach and Danny Hurley, but the team, I don't think there's, any animosity, vitriol that's directed to them. Duke, it's just wearing the jersey. Or Kentucky, It's just wearing the jersey. And you might not like Calipari, and maybe you didn't like Krzyzewski, but with UConn, maybe it's Danny Hurley rubs you the wrong way.
I'm interested in this because I think, have you had him on the show? Have you ever had Danny on the show?
Yes, last year.
Okay, and what do you think of him? He's a funny guy, but he's an odd bird.
Quirky.
I mean, quirky is a good word. He'll admit that too. I mean, it's almost like Dan, he does the lucky underwear thing. He does the sensory deprivation tank thing. If something's in the floor, like somebody threw a sweatshirt in his floor this year, I assume still wrapped up. So they won the game, so he wouldn't move it, until they lost. He stepped around it and stepped over it. And it's almost like Dan's a really smart guy, as you know. And it's almost as if he knows it's ridiculous and he knows it has nothing to do with them winning. But then there's that little piece of him that goes, but what if it does? I better not take a chance, And it's, it gives them great theater and drama around them, whether he's yelling at a fan and all this stuff. He's a character, and it does bear some responsibility because with the changeover in coaches, in my judgment, he is best positioned to be the face of college basketball. So the quirkiness, good. Maybe dial back the yelling at the fans here and there, and maybe that would be better for everybody.
Rece Davis, ESPN College Game Day host, play-by-play voice of the mothership as well. But you know what? I don't know if you did this. I did this when I did SportsCenter. There was a routine that I would have to do, and it's not quirky or OCD, but it borders on that of, this time I had to do it. I had to go watch this. I had to like it was just weird. I needed to have some kind of schedule before I went to SportsCenter. You don't have that with College Game Day?
No, I do. I absolutely do. And it's there are two things. The first one is for College Game Day football, especially. We have a truck driver named Tommy Marshall who's always around the set. And I won't go up those stairs until Tommy and I have met at the bottom of the stairs and we shake hands very formally and then we hug. And when he's with us in basketball, I do it too. And in times when he's not with us in basketball, Tommy assigns someone to take that duty. So I do that. And when I sit down and I do this, whether this is game day, I started this on SportsCenter when I was doing raps too. I sort of say to myself, I call it the 4 Ps. I want to have poise, I want to have presence, personality, and preparation. And, the poise, a lot of this, and I'm not trying to blow sunshine up your skirt, but a lot of this because I've told people over the years when I first started and people were too afraid to call you, but they would call me to say, hey, I want to get better. I would say, watch Dan Patrick. I would say, I don't try to imitate Dan's personality. Watch how Dan handles himself on camera. He's the gold standard. And I think that you've always had that poise and presence. And I don't recall us ever having that conversation, but I do credit you for taking that because I feel like that if a light falls on the set in front of me, I don't want to panic and make the people at home uncomfortable. I want to push to the side and say, we're going to get that cleaned up for you. Meanwhile, Dan Hurley's worried about, this matchup and just continue on. And I feel like that you always had that grace and poise and presence. And but I say those 4 words to myself and I want to hug Tommy, before I go on. So I guess I'm got a little bit of Hurley in me too, I guess.
But I think the more prepared you are, the more poise you have, and the more poise you have, the more presence that you have. So I just think, it's all about preparation. I
Yes.
remember one night doing SportsCenter and the roof was leaking. It was raining so hard, and I was on camera and I asked for a cup, and I just put a cup on the set, and I was collecting the rain on the set in Bristol. But we still had to do a show. It was live,
Yeah.
but you could hear this bloop, bloop, and it's splashing all over us. And I go, can I get a cup, please? It's raining in here. And then I just put it down there. I was like, all right, whatever. Let me ask you about Nick Saban. How you guys go to him? Does he come to you? How does that relationship work for him and TV?
Do you mean in terms of when he starts being with us on game day?
Yeah. Now it's full time. Now it's official. Not just let me do a cameo or two.
Yeah, right. I think we will spend some time going to him in the off season, and from what I've talked about, and I had a
But did he come to you guys that he wanted to do it, or did you?
I see. This has been going on. I guess I can say this now. This has been out there and a possibility for several years. It was a matter of when Nick wanted to do it. So I feel like this is now. Some of this is beyond me, although I was fully aware of it. I think this has been coming from us to him for quite some time. When you are ready, we are ready. In fact, I haven't said this. I have recently now, but I didn't for a year. What I said to him, Dan, at the championship game, Georgia TCU, was we were having a conversation there, and I said to him, I said, Nick, as an Alabama alumnus, I would prefer that you be the head coach of the Crimson Tide forever. I said, as the host of College Game Day, I'm ready for you to join this set yesterday. I said, so whatever I can do to help with that transition would be great. I said, because I think you'd be phenomenal on TV. And so I think in that standpoint, the offer has been out there for him for quite some time whenever he was ready. And to be honest, when he opted not to do it last year, I had almost said, okay, well, this is just not going to happen. There's always some reason that would draw him back to the field. So I'm thrilled for him because I think he's going to enjoy this, and I'm delighted for us because he's going to add another layer to our show that's hard to find in television. He's going to be great. He's already working his tail off on the draft, which is awesome.
It's tricky though when you have that guy that you got to be careful of how often you go to him. Like he has to meet you guys too. It has to be, you got to keep up with Herbie. You got, Desmond and that's what you're hoping for. Cause I did that with Tony Dungy. I think I was trying to help him too much on the air instead of forcing him to kind of catch up and be with us. Not that he couldn't, but I think he was so used to being asked questions because that's what, these coaches wait for you to ask. Now you have to be involved in the conversation. And to me, that'll be something sort of behind the curtain that I'll be looking forward to watching.
That's a great way to put it because I think, and I'll be interested in how you feel about this. It's a joke internally that if someone comes in to produce a segment, say we're doing a segment for SportsCenter, if they say, Rece, tee up Kirk or whatever, I take offense at that. I always say, you want somebody to tee somebody up, get a trained SEAL. I've got stuff to do. And you used the phrase, be involved in the conversation. Now, a host needs to know where the lines are in the area of expertise. But being involved in the conversation is important for the host, and it's important for a new coach too, not to sit back and be looking at this as if he is the only expert, which he is the ultimate one as a coach. But Kirk's opinion does not get diminished. Desmond's opinion, Pat's opinion, those judgments and Lee's judgments, they don't get diminished. They are now folded into the group. And that's a great point. But I think the good news is that Nick has been extraordinarily respectful of everyone around him and aware of what goes into it, to the point where he constantly, even when he was just, with us for a championship run or something, would talk to the producers about what do we need here? What are you looking for from me? He really understands team, which I think is going to be of a great benefit to him and to us.
Thanks again. Congrats again for all your success. Thanks for joining us. And
likewise.
And Roll Tide.
All right, we'll see you then. Go ESPN.
Yeah. Rece Davis of the Mothership, College Game Day host and play-by-play voice as well.